firstly, as you know, quite a lot of stuff is going on apparently at the moment. And there's a very important meeting that we're holding in Parliament with all the key ministers to look at now the way forward in the wake of the referendum result. You don't need me to tell you about the huge importance and value, we've heard from Antonio, of medium businesses. What you can be sure and confident about is that in certainly this minister, you will have somebody who will champion and do everything that is possible to make sure that we now put some stability and some confidence back into our economy in what are undoubtedly very dark and difficult days. You don't need me to tell you that if anybody tries to make out that everything's marvellous and wonderful in the wake of this referendum result, they are living in the land of the fairies. I think most of you will know my views on the referendum, my views on the result. I'm frankly struggling to come to terms with the decision that this country has made. I'll be very honest about that. I think there are a lot of people who are still saying, I voted Leave, but I didn't actually think we would. Boris Johnson, I think, might be one of those people. However, most importantly, and this, I mean this absolutely, we have to move on. I have to move on. I have to accept this decision, and we now have to move on working together to make sure that we do the very best by our country and by obviously our economy and by the people of our country. And I think it's also fair to say that not only are we in grave economic difficulties, as politicians we haven't helped you much either. We are in pretty much a political crisis. I think things are beginning to resolve in my party. I would very much like to see a new, good, strong leader who we can all be confident in. I'm backing Theresa May, no doubt in my mind about that she has the qualities we need. I wish we could get on with that process, because if there's one thing that I know from my time in business and all the connections that I have within my family, is the one thing you need is you need that confidence, you need that continuity, you need that knowing and certainty, most importantly, of where we're going. Certainly, I think that she would deliver that, but it looks like we'll go through and we won't get our new leader until September. But I think it's also important to say that now is not the time for anybody, especially at the top levels of government, to put their own personal ambitions ahead of what needs to be done and the task ahead of us. We need cool, calm heads to take us through these difficult times. What I would say, I mean, I think that the job that the Chancellor did, Mark Carney and others who've come together, trying to put some liquidity back in, trying to calm and steady the nerve and the markets has paid off. I think we've still got some rocky roads yet ahead of us, but I think that a time will come when we can see some sort of, whether it's not so much a bottoming down, but we can certainly see that stability that is absolutely critical and that certainty. I know that this conference today is all about productivity, and I want to take this opportunity to pay a huge tribute to the leadership of the CBI through these difficult times and through the referendum. You didn't falter in being a real voice of sense. I can only say I'm sorry that apparently we don't listen to experts anymore. I think that might be a lesson the British public might now learn, that actually listening to experts might be a jolly good thing. But can I just pay tribute to the leadership of the CBI and all your members who took part in the debate and injected such sanity into it. And I know that you'll continue to play your part in the difficult journey ahead. On a positive note, and there is some positivity, I mean, you've got to be absolutely adamant about this. Yes, we have the ability to be a nation that is very much making it clear we are open for business. Trade missions to parts of the world continue, as you might expect, and rightly and properly so. And of course, who would have thought that after around 2008, which was a rather difficult time for us as our economy began to crash, that actually we would get to the situation that we have got ourselves to. Employment at record levels, the 5th largest economy. And I think under the great leadership of George Osborne and of course David Cameron, we have restored our economy and we have put it on a much greater, surer footing so that we can weather dreadful storms like the Brexit storm that we're beginning to see, and undoubtedly we will go through, hopefully coming out of it, and I'm confident we will come out of it stronger and in a better place. For me, there is no debate about it. We have got to have access to that single market. And last week, when I went out on both Thursday and then Friday, And we'd had a big meeting with the CBI and others on the Tuesday. And then come Thursday, my view is, I'm paid to do a job, which is to be the business minister, not sit around in Westminster, scuttling around in corridors and plotting and all the rest of it. So I was due to go out on Thursday to the northeast, and that's what I did. And then on the Friday into the northwest. And I met with a number of people, as you might imagine. I had great good fortune to speak to the Manufacturers Federation dinner in the northeast. There are a lot, I don't need to tell you this, a lot of worried, troubled people out there. A lot of tough decisions that are going to have to be made in the next few months about big investment looking to the future. What you can be assured is that government at the top level absolutely knows and understands that. And in the Prime Minister, you need to be assured that he will not falter in making representations on behalf of British business to make sure that our international companies in particular don't now not invest, don't hold back, but we can give them the confidence and the surety that they need. And Oliver Letwin, who, as you know, is heading up this team, this cabinet in the Cabinet Office, looking at how we negotiate out of the European Union and how we secure a good deal. You have somebody, again, you can be very sure is doing the right thing, who is listening, understands and gets it. And as you might imagine, there are things that I simply can't talk about. But certainly the feedback that I got when I went out last week has gone straight back in at that top level, and already actions are underway to put that confidence and stability in, and to make sure that we don't lose some of these huge pieces of investment that are so important for our economy. Quickly going back to the subject that you are all here to discuss, which is productivity. Never before has the need for this government or any government to get its act together on productivity been more acute. I think some of you will know my very firm views on the need to make sure that we increase the access to superfast broadband. Apparently 90% of businesses, actually I'm not sure it is businesses, I think it's users, have access to a superfast internet connection. I've already asked to understand that data, because it's remarkable, because I keep meeting everywhere I go that 10% who don't have it. And it's remarkable. I only ever meet the 10% that don't have it. Isn't that absolutely astonishing? But this is a very serious, I don't need to tell you again, this is a very serious problem. It is not good enough in this day and age that I go to too many businesses. No, it's not just rural businesses either. That's another great myth. Yes, they have their problems. But, I in my own constituency, in the great city of Nottingham, damn it, in London, there are parts of our country where you still can't get that access. It is not acceptable, and neither is it acceptable when you can't get more than 1 or 2 bars on your mobile phone. So this is a huge task that's simply got to be grasped and advanced. In relation to finance, I'm delighted to hear Antonio's warm words about Lloyds. I'm sure other banks would say similar things. I would be now even more delighted, gentlemen, forgive me, if we could now see the action on those warm words, because I still get too many stories back of small, medium-sized businesses who don't get the access that they would like. I'm delighted that you particularly mentioned the construction sector. I think that there is a very good example of where if we can now really sort of accelerate that, can make a huge, huge difference to our economy. And I have to tell you that having met a number of the small, medium-sized builders and the banks, we still have a big disconnect between the warm words and the reality of it. So I think there's a lot to be done there. Totally agree about the need for bringing forward projects now on infrastructure. I'm a huge fan of HS2, horribly biased because I'm going to get the East Midlands hub in my constituency, and I can tell you my constituents are delighted at that. But there are other infrastructure projects which we need the certainty in, and if we can do it, we now need to bring them forward, because I think that would really help in installing confidence in our economy. And finally, excuse me, as you know, I've been doing quite a lot of talking in the last couple of weeks. Skills. I just would say this to you. When you look at the results, and if you are minded to, just look at some of the results. Look at areas like my county, which obviously I'm born and bred East Midlander, so I know it very well. Look at the area of Ashfield. Ashfield, there's no such place, by the way, as Ashfield. It's a collection, because the results were done on borough, on local authority boundaries. So it's a collection of 3 main communities that are all former coal mining areas. So the 2 Ashfields and a place called Hucknall, where my brother lives. So just in case anybody thinks I'm talking it down, I'm not. These are great places in our country. Look at what happened there. The turnout was 77%. There has never been an election in that area that has anywhere got close to a turnout of 77%. And of that 77%, 69.8% voted to leave the European Union. Now, there are lots of very sensible, good people who voted to leave the European Union. I don't share their views. I think their reasoning was flawed, but I accept for a significant number of people, they looked at the arguments and they made a decision based on good, sound arguments, if you like. But let's be honest about it. There's an awful lot of people who voted to leave the European Union, not because they don't like the European Union, but because they were disaffected, disconnected, disillusioned with politicians, big banks as they see it, big business as they see it. And it was a gesture of saying, and effectively, and up yours, I have an opportunity for my vote actually to count, which it normally doesn't, in truth. And they took that opportunity to say, I am saying no to immigration, and I am saying no to what I perceive to be the establishment. And if you dig into the demography and the life chances of those people, their low expectations, they are usually people who feel that the world, our country, has moved on by them and left them disillusioned, disaffected, disconnected. And overwhelmingly, most of those people will have been people who have not had the opportunities in education, skills and training that we have had and we expect for our children and our grandchildren. So absolutely, without doubt, and for all sorts of reasons, we have never again got to be in a position where we have a large part of or a significant part of our society who feel like that. We have got to improve the life chances for everybody in this country, and especially those who start off from a considerably less advantaged position than most of us. And getting them the right education, the aspiration and the opportunity to improve themselves above their parents and their grandparents through skills and training and ambition has to be, in my opinion, one of the first and most important things that the next government, when it forms, I think in September, does. So those are my messages. Do forgive me. I've spoken far longer than I intended. Forgive me. I will now take questions, but thank you. Thank you also for the great work you do. Let's all try, work together and be positive about building a great Britain. So I'll take some questions.
Thank you.
I'll stand here.
Is there anyone who'd like to ask a question at this point? Yeah, we've got a gentleman there and a couple over here. So we'll go to this gentleman first. Just a microphone heading your way. If you could just tell us who you are, where you're from.
Hello, good morning. I'm Matthew Thompson from Cornwall with the Local Enterprise Partnership down there and a small business called Jamie Oliver's 15 Cornwall. Thank you. Share your pain on the result. Question, do you think we've got a bit of a moment of accountability now? Chilcot yesterday, that's an accountability moment. Accountability is key to the success of any small business. We're accountable to our staff, which is how we do better. We're accountable to our customers. We're directly accountable with small businesses. There's nowhere to hide. I've come up here on the sleeper last night. There's lots of places to hide up here. Very good to hear you being so frank. I think right now the political reset requires a new spirit of accountability to improve the productivity of our policymakers and so-called leaders.
I completely agree with you, totally and utterly. And I think actually at the time of Joe Cox's murder, I wasn't alone in saying that we needed to reset the dial in politics. So we need to reset the way that politics is reported in our country. We need to reset the language. Frankly, I'm fed up with being seen as fair game. I mean, my own reputation has been, it's like when Joe Cox died, that's what we all said we would do. We would reset this dial. We would do things differently and we have a different tone. And it's like, that all just disappeared overnight. So people like myself have found, I'm fed up with having my reputation trashed. I've been called all sorts of things. I was a bit worried. I thought Blairite was one of the most peculiar insults that I'd had. But, being serious, I've been called a traitor, a racist, and a drunk. This is outrageous. I'm none of those things, and I'm meant to accept it. And I think that's one of the things that we have to stop. But the more important point, in a way, is this accountability. And unless we get good people coming into politics, my daughters look at me. They open the pages of a newspaper or they look at social media and they think that their mother has taken leave of her senses, being involved in politics, getting this sort of abuse. And so until we start to do these things, we won't get people involved in politics who've got real life experiences and have a real desire to change things. That's why you should come into politics. You shouldn't see it as some career, but you should see it about making a difference and changing. And part of that is then the immediate accountability. I represented a seat, having first got elected with a majority of 389. So it's a marginal seat, and there's a profound difference between those of us in marginal seats and those people with great big hefty majorities. I am absolutely accountable to all my constituents, and I don't have a problem with that. And I will always work hard for them, and it keeps you absolutely grounded. And if we had more of, not me, but more of that sort of not taking things for granted, being in the real world, listening to people, talking to people, and then acting in their interests, I think it would make a huge difference to our country and to our politics.
I'm aware you have to go now, don't you?
No, I don't know. What's the time? Have I got 5?
I think you have to go now.
5 minutes. Go on. Just
3
take
minutes,
a couple.
right? Great. We can squeeze in.
I'll shut up more.
Hello, it's Carl Hick. It's two questions. One of the things that a lot of my staff are worried about is that now that they're seeing that the food bills are going up because of the imports, petrol's gone up 9p a litre, holidays, currency. I saw Marty Lewis the other night talking about the average family is going to cost £2,000 a year more, and all of those issues. A lot of people who were in the Leave campaign are now saying, well, what can we do to do anything about changing it? Because so many people are now saying, well, all these things that were said we never believed, and now, actually, the kind of stuff that was said is actually coming out to be true. Now, We've got this Article 50 to serve, which at some stage will be done by the government. And I wonder if that has to go through Parliament and then through the Lords. Is that likely to happen? Or will the public sentiment be changing by so much by then, where people will be thinking, actually, this referendum was so close, is it the right thing to do or not?
You had one question there.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, there is a big debate about Article 50 amongst lawyers. Article 50, if you don't know, is the device by which you have to trigger to leave the European Union. There is a view that the Prime Minister, whoever he or she may be, has that right. He doesn't need to go to Parliament. There is a very alternative point of view that, on the contrary, Article 50 can only be triggered by a vote in Parliament. Be under no illusions. These are huge constitutional issues. If you thought it was bad now, I think we're going to see a huge constitutional crisis. I'm sorry, I can only apologise for what has happened. But there will be a real difficulty about that. Then you've got the problem of what happened in Scotland. Fascinatingly, also the vote in Northern Ireland. And so I'm afraid I think there will be great and grave uncertainty. I think the best thing for me is to say nothing, because I'm in danger of probably saying more than I should, but about what I would hope and what I would want. What I best can say is I think if we have the access to the single market, that is such a big prize, and that's the prize that I certainly will be fighting for. But these other things you rightly identify are very, very difficult, and there is no, in my opinion, there is no simple answer. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I've got to go to another meeting.
To go to.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Good to see you guys.